Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And welcome to this week's Thoughtful Thursday. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Hacking Your Leadership and leave us a review on whatever podcast platform you're using right now. We'll wait. Go ahead and do it now.
Take your time.
Yeah. On this week's Thoughtful Thursday, I want to talk about our Monday episode. And if you already listened to Monday, then you'll kind of be expecting this already. If you didn't listen to our Monday episode, then go back and listen to it. We're talking about how you transition from being a leader of individual contributors to being a leader of leaders, and how that looks different to your kind of day-to-day work life. On Monday, we talked about how clear expectations need to be set with your people. And, we asked for feedback from our audience. We got some great feedback. I got so many messages on Instagram, and one clear kind of like trend emerged from several of the messages. And it was based on, our 1 minute hack for Monday was around making sure you're sitting down with your people and talking about, what the expectations are. You're going to set clear expectations, and they're going to give you the roadblocks they're experiencing. And one of the things that was brought up was the fact that, meeting people where they are is a very individualized way of approaching things. And that's important. But what's also important is not allowing silos to kind of be created if you have multiple people doing the same job, like multiple teams. So if I'm a leader of leaders and the 6 people reporting to me all do the same job, but they just have different teams that are reporting up through them, there will naturally be a trend of some of those leaders doing things one way and some of the leaders doing things a different way. And that isn't always a problem, but it can be a problem. And there needs to be some mitigation that is done from a leadership standpoint, if you're a leader of leaders, to stop that from happening, or at least reducing the fallout. What do you think about this?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great call out. And to the point of the show on Monday, like there is definitely a need to kind of individualize the development and the clarity and the follow-up when you are a leader of leaders. But to the point of what happens when you have redundancy in the same role, well, you need to actually bring those leaders together. Like that's the second part of this, is that you need to say like, okay, well, if I've got these leaders and I've got a leader of like operations and then a leader of marketing and a leader of sales, but then I've got 3 sales leaders, like there's a need to have those 3 sales leaders together to talk through whatever is the expectation, what the approach is going to be. And there could be some uniqueness and some good maybe differences or debate around that, but their ability to align on maybe the timelines or the way in which they're going to engage, those things are critically important for larger teams to make sure that you don't have this big swinging delta of how things are done differently by leader, and the team doesn't feel like leaders aren't aligned or that they're doing different types of work. So I think that it's a great call out from a leadership standpoint. And even if you have maybe 6 leaders and they all have a different part of the business, there's still the need to have the collective kind of leadership meeting where you can make sure that they are all thinking about the larger goal setting. They're working together. They're looking at whatever maybe the bottom line is or the overall vision is. There's always that need for bringing groups of leaders together to make sure that there is alignment in expectations. But then as a leader of leader, we spent a lot of our time on Monday talking about specifically your role as a leader of leaders and making sure that you're having the individualized conversations so that you can help the different deltas of leaders in regards to their capability or their experience.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So it's not an either or, it's an and. You have to have the individual conversations to make sure that you are supporting your people how they need to be supported, to make sure that you're not micromanaging some and not supporting others enough, because everybody wants to be led differently. On the same token, they all have to get together, and they all have to be kind of almost like you would go through a talent calibration, where you want to make sure that what does good look like, right? So if you ask 5 different people what does good look like, and they all have different definitions of what good looks like for their individual people, then you'll end up with some really high-performing people who get called mediocre, and you'll end up with really mediocre people who get called high performance because they happen to be the highest performing person on that particular team. And so most companies who know what they're doing are going to go through that kind of calibration process to make sure that the definition of what is considered an A player, a really high-quality, high-performing player, versus someone who is not a high-performing player, and where the steps are in the middle, that looks the same across the board. When you have people who don't necessarily work with each other every day, but they're still responsible for delivering the same outcomes every day. That's really important. It's the exact same thing with this. You want to make sure that while you as the leader of leaders is meeting your people where they are, that you're also making sure that they get in the room together to kind of talk about what that looks like and how they deliver things to their people. Because otherwise what you end up happening is you have people in different parts of the organization looking at each other going, life looks better over there than it does over here for whatever reason. And it doesn't mean that any of them are wrong or right. It just means that they have different experiences, and that's leading them to believe that things could be different or better for their particular experience. So what I want to ask you, Lorenzo, is have you ever inherited a team or joined a team where you had to kind of unravel some of this that was going on because you had different leaders who were looked at differently just because of how they executed their role? So I want to ask you that, but first I want to get a word from one of our sponsors. All right, Lorenzo, how have you taken over a team where you've had to lead leaders and figure out how to make it sure that your people can do what they need to do in order to be themselves? They're not expected to all be clones of each other, but they also are expected to deliver almost a minimum level of how the support is being delivered to their team, so their teams don't start feeling like one is a better leader than the other.
If I could answer that question, you and I would probably both be billionaires at this point because it's every single team, and even when you are getting a team working well together and highly aligned, it's still a thing that you're working through. Like, again, I don't think that there's ever, in my experience, there's ever a true solve for that, because we talk a lot about the power of like diversity in background and capability and experience, and like you need to have ongoing debates. You need to have ongoing conversations and dialogue around exactly that thing, which is how do we not fall into the idea of groupthink? How to have respect for people's differences of opinions and different approaches and whatnot, but at the same time, not have that be felt by a larger team. So I definitely have stepped into teams where that was a ginormous opportunity, where it was like clearly everybody was just doing their own thing. And most of it was like they got to the point where there was so much infighting that they just wouldn't even talk to each other. And if somebody would talk about what they were doing with their team, they would just tune out because it didn't matter, because they were so siloed. And then I've been there with teams where they have great chemistry as a team, but they didn't realize that it was just good chemistry, but they would go do their own thing anyway. So it's like there's a lot of different times, but every single team that I've worked on or worked with has always had some elements of that. And I think the idea is that you're consistent with the value structure, that you're consistent with the passion and the purpose that you have to lead your team. So like if the things that are like non-negotiables is like you really kind of have to love people. You have to have a passion for helping people to become better. Like these are the things that you need complete alignment on. How you go about showing that type of emotion or love or passion for the people, that can be different. But at the core of it, these are the core things that we all have to stand for. And if you don't stand for these things, then that's a conversation that we have to have. And then over time, the idea is that you bring leaders together where you see where they can get value from one another. But again, like we said before, you tell them that that's what you're doing. Chris, I'm going to have you work with Lorenzo. Let me tell you why. Your approach to this is very analytical. It's super helpful when we're trying to get down to the root of exactly what needs to happen without elements of kind of like emotion or this type of stuff. Lorenzo, you're really great at understanding what is the feel of the team, or how might that message come across, or what are things that are the nuances that we need to consider. So I need the two of you to work together in that space so that I know whatever the strategy is a balance of both. And maybe sometimes it's a little bit more of one than the other, but that's what I need the two of you to work through. And I expect you to have a little bit of fireworks, but I absolutely believe that whatever the outcome of this conversation is going to be, it's going to be better for us. It's going to be better for our team. So like that's the level of clarity that you have to have in the expectations when you're asking leaders who may not see things the same exact way, or may bring completely different skills to the table, a space to go in there and have the dialogue that needs to happen.
Yeah, I love that. And there are two things that I kind of hear when you say that. One, it takes a high level of self-awareness on those people. So the people who get together and figure out the right way to go forward because they each bring different skills to the team, both of those people or all of those people need to inherently be aware of the fact that, hey, this is the thing that I'm good at and I'm here for that reason. But these are the things that I am not good at, and why these other people are here for a reason. And if you start by thinking that my way is the only right way to do it, it's not going to be a productive conversation. So fireworks, yes, but lines in the sand and headbutting, there's definitely a fine line where it becomes not productive. And I think where that line is the level of self-awareness each person has as to where they bring skills to the team and where there are things that areas where they don't necessarily have skills. The second part of that I hear is that I think there needs to be a leapfrog relationship when it comes to leaders of leaders. And so if I'm a leader of leaders, I need to make sure that I at least have my thumb on the pulse of the people who report to my direct reports, that there's an open door policy, that we can have individual conversations, that I kind of bypass my direct reports and go directly to the level below them, not from a standpoint of undermining them, but from a standpoint of, hey, let's just talk. Let's just have an open dialogue and a conversation here, because it might very well be that the leaders who report directly to me, that they have differences in how they do their job and how they perform their roles. And some of their people might not be doing well under one of those people, but if they got moved to a different person, they might really thrive in this organization. And so it's a way, as if I'm a leader of leaders, I need to make sure that my talent is moved about into the right areas to understand that I can't eliminate differences in how leaders lead. I can make sure that the values are aligned, but there are some actual tactical ways of leading people that align with some and don't align with others. And whatever I can do to make sure that the right team members are reporting up to the right leaders, I can mitigate some of the disengagement or the lack of productivity or the lack of job satisfaction that can occur when I have a leader who's a good leader who knows what they're doing, a person who's a good person knows what they're doing, but they just don't mesh well together. Hopefully that doesn't happen very often, but it does happen.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode. This is Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And have a great day.